Hi, I'm Miriam, and today I have a guest, Carolyn Gravely, and she is the creator of the Matrix of Light Tarot. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Miriam.
What inspired you to create this gorgeous deck?
Well, it was a long, long journey. It started out that I was making soul collages, and they were on a fairly large piece of paper. I was cutting out little images and putting them on, and then reflecting back on what I was making. And after I had about 200 of those, my husband, Steve, said to me, "Why don't you make a tarot deck?" And I'm like, "Really?" And then I thought, well, Miriam made her own tarot deck. I'd met Miriam 5 years earlier. It really impressed me that she had her own deck. So I was like, well, okay, I'll try. I'll start with the major arcana cards. I actually sort of whizzed through that whole process. At the time, my mother was dying and she had Alzheimer's, and I was taking care of her. And it really gave me a way of just focusing on, okay, today I'm making the Fool card, and sort of blocking everything else out that was going on around me and just focusing on the deck. I was pretty much finished with the deck by the time my mom died. And then I had the process of putting it all on the computer and making my booklet to go with it, which took much longer and was much more difficult for me.
Much more difficult than making the collages.
Oh, right. Yeah, the collage was just fun and intuitive. And first I made the major arcana, and then Steve's like, well, why don't you go ahead and do the minor arcana or the court cards? And I'm like, okay. And I thought I'll never be able to find 10 swords to cut out. So I ended up making the swords and cutting them out myself and gluing them on. So it was quite a process.
And then this deck is designed after the Thoth deck. Is that correct?
Correct, after Crowley's deck. And my husband's actually been a tarot reader since I met him 40 years ago. And when I met him, that was one of the few possessions he had, was the Crowley deck. So I just followed that deck.
And do you have any collages with you?
So this, I just have this one here that I made of the High Priestess. And this is the original size of the deck. And some of these pictures, this one was black and white, and I ended up painting it. I think this is an old movie star or something. And then when I put it on the computer in Photoshop, and it ended up looking like this.
Oh,
And
no.
I have the astrology symbol on there, and the purple veil didn't show up, but this is what they ended up looking like once they were put on the computer.
And actually, though, can you hold up both of those so we can
Oh,
see
sure.
the difference? Because I know with Photoshop, and then once you print them, there's like all of these other things that happen. What about the lovely guide book? Because you first printed the deck, correct?
Correct. And then I wrote the guidebook. Perhaps you're supposed to do it the other way around. I don't know. But first I made the deck, and then I thought, well, I better have a book to go with it.
What can you tell us about the background?
So the backgrounds of the card are the Hubble space. It's a Hubble space picture.
Before we got on, I pulled a card from your deck. So what I pulled the Prince of Swords. So I thought that that was interesting because I'm the communicator.
So the prince is he's he's the intellectual part of the intellectual center, which is how Crowley says it. And so he's a great thinker, and he's also very good verbally.
And what's the image again?
So that is a Middle Eastern image. Every card seems to have a little bit of a theme. Like sometimes I used a Hindu theme. This happens to be a Middle Eastern theme with the Middle Eastern. I don't know if it's a rug behind him and he's a Middle Eastern man. I tried to use a lot of images from different cultures. And I also tried for many, many of my cards to use female images. Of course, for a prince, I had to use a male image. And I pulled the card right before we were on
Wow.
just to see how the interview would go. And I got the Six of Discs, which is success.
Oh, nice.
And so this is a picture of Lakshmi here, and she's the Hindu goddess of prosperity. And she has so much that she's able to give to other people. So it's a very feminine deck. The first card, the Fool, is a woman. Few places I had to put men in there for the emperor and the prince.
Right, we need the men anyway.
We have to have some men in there, right? Mostly when I was making the cards, I was just putting them together so they worked aesthetically.
So, can you tell us what, Matrix of Light is from?
So Matrix of Light is my website where I do matrix re-imprinting work, which is a form, an offshoot of EFT. And I just chose that for my name of my deck because I'm still doing my matrix work where we actually go back into past events in your life and then try to clear them. If people are interested, I tell them I have a deck now and I'll pull a card and we can focus on that card for whatever they're working on, whatever issue they're working on at the time.
So, kinda like it shows another layer.
Right, right, right. The same with tarot in motion. It just gives us another layer to work on. Mhm.
So, can you tell us where you can purchase this deck?
Sure. You can email me at c.gravely, Gravely, at comcast.net. Or you can go to my website, www.matrixoflight.net.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you, Miriam.